What's going on, everyone? What's going on?
What a nice photo to lead off with. A family photo.
Aw.
Nice. Just what I was going to talk about.
I thought we'd all appreciate the old Sears Photo Center nostalgia that picture brings up,
Yep.
Right.
Moved my heart.
with a
Yeah,
forest background behind you.
welcome everyone to another episode of Carbonite Bound BS with me and the nerds. How's everyone doing this week? Good.
Good.
Great.
What's going on? Yeah.
It's definitely been good. But as we discussed last week, guys, this will be our season three kind of review and discussion point of Mandalorian season three, and we'll do some general housekeeping news and notes as all things related to Star Wars as we got some interesting information this week from maybe some returns back to the series. So before we even dive into that, let's try DP, let you guys know where to find us at.
Nerdcyclopedia.com. Make sure that you go into your favorite website, getting all your favorite social media platforms in session, and making sure you're atting us and doing all that good social media stuff on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and also on TikTok. If you are listening to us on podcasts, make sure that you are subscribing to us on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast. We are there. Subscribe to us also on YouTube. Thank you for watching us. And also hit that notification button. So anytime that we're on, you know that we're on. Share it with your friends. If you're watching us on the Facebook feed, Carbonite Bounty BS, the Star Wars group, we are on that feed talking about everything Star Wars. Make sure that you share that too, so we can get some more members to join. Email us, nerds@nerdcyclopedia.com. We love getting responses and everything and feedback on anything we could do better on air, because we're not perfect, but we strive to be.
Well said, well said.
Add
We're
us
not
now.
perfect.
Add us now. Add us now.
No, DP, but yeah, kind of good segue to start as far as, feedback and whatnot. I mean, it's kind of funny because we discussed this, kind of like we did our quick review obviously last week with the finale, but a lot of weird mixed reviews coming in. I'm sure other people who listen to us watch, follow other larger accounts and are in media as well as we are, and it's just the reaction I've kind of seen is kind of funny. It's like a mixed bag, right? Like I get, where some people are coming from somewhat, but then I'm like on the other side, like really, like what can we expect? I mean, I think that as we discuss this more and more, and DP, we've said this, like it's almost like we've been spoiled. We're getting to this fact that we're that spoiled brat child. I know Hitch has alluded to this so much. We've gotten so much content like over the last couple years, right? And it's been with Marvel, right? They've delivered so many good projects for so many phases that like we're at this point to where like literally it's impossible for them to top like the next thing. And so it's hard to really like take some of their stuff, because obviously you want to be open, you open minded to everybody's opinion, but like some of the stuff I'm hearing and reading and like it's just like we talk about headcanon and it's stuff, but it's like some of the stuff I'm reading and hearing, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what more can they do? Yeah, we wanted more of this, yeah, we wanted more of that, but ultimately like we got what, 8 episodes, roughly 40 minutes each, 320 minutes. I mean, that's basically a two-part movie of content.
Yeah.
What more can we ask? So we'll just start right there. I'll let you guys kind of take the floor and we'll just kind of float around and see what everybody's thoughts are as far as, general thoughts as far as where the season went.
So I was thinking about this during the week and everything, and I was listening to a couple podcasts and stuff. I'm hearing that if you binge this season or binge like a few episodes in a row, it plays out a lot better than waiting every week, for each episode. If you're sitting up there waiting for a week for a certain thing to happen and then going back to the next week, it's like, okay, you're heavily anticipating something and then writing something in your head via headcanon or whatever, and then it ends up not being the case. Whereas if you're binging like a Netflix model or whatever, 5 seconds later, you're on to the next episode, and the last episode
But doesn't that corrupt the way these things are being dropped to us?
Well, so I mean, there's two ways you can look at it. So if the way the story is being written is being written as episodic week to week, okay?
Yes. Cliffhangers.
Cliffhangers and stuff. So if that's the effect they're trying to get, it hasn't resonated with everyone. You know, personally to me, I'm fine with it and everything. I enjoyed the season. But I can see where, you know, certain people are coming from with like the binge model, 3 or 4 episodes in a row, or at least 2 or 3 episodes, you know, in bulk, and then you know, and then you binge those, and then, you know, go to the next week, and then 3 more episodes, and then, you know, of course you get a shorter season, but that's the way they program it and stuff. But with the Netflix type model where everything drops at once, you may get a better, you know, season understanding, or a better vibe for it, you know, for the season and stuff. I don't know, because hindsight is 2020. You know, you could say it could play like that, but, you know, I'm not the one watching it for the first time binging this whole thing. It's for those who have done or doing that now, who can, you know, speak to that, you know, the most. But yeah, but there, I mean, that's where I'm at, you know, with that.
I don't think this season dropped the ball. I don't. I think it kept things going. I think it anticipated. So I looked forward to each new episode. I wasn't like drained. It wasn't that Netflix thing. Now, I'm a Stranger Things fan.
Right.
Now, that's a show that I think needs to be binge watched. Just the way it's fed to me.
Right.
That's my opinion. Okay.
Right.
I don't think, if I had to wait week to week for another episode of Stranger Things, would it captivate me?
I think it would.
Yeah, well,
I
it would be up to them
Because
to
to
try.
be honest,
they would have to try it. They'd have to
on-
try it and see if it worked.
on
But-
your point, that's the whole conundrum what Netflix is running into, right? They don't have the platform to release Stranger Things week by week, and they've shown that with them trying to live stream like shows and whatnot.
Yeah, right.
You know,
they can't
I'm
do
like,
any live events.
Yeah, they can't do it.
They try to do a live event, and they literally their platform crashed.
Right.
And
I pick on Stranger Things, but I also watched Lost in Space, the reboot, and that was
Yeah.
great. But there again, I don't think that held continuity. I don't think it would have held my interest if I had to wait a week to watch an episode. I needed to watch that thing in chunks, like 3 or 4 at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mandalorian, I think they spaced it properly, and I think it made me want that next week. You know, I was looking forward to Wednesday. It wasn't like I'm one and done. You know, I wasn't that going to leave it. And I just have to say, so I understand where this season fit, because it brought Bo-Katan into the front, like the forefront of this story. And this is important, because at first I thought, she's just waiting. She's beat and she's waiting for something to happen. No, she was waiting for something to happen to her. And that was Din coming to her to bring her into the fold so she could get back what she was entitled to. And I think without this season and the way it was built, I don't think we would have gotten that as smoothly as it happened. My only objection to this season, and I wanted to see that mythosaur. I wanted to see that thing, because they teased it twice, and at neither time did we see this most important element of the Mandalorian creed, was the mythosaur.
right.
We never saw it.
Yeah.
It didn't do anything. We saw a lot of other cool creatures, but wouldn't it have been great to see the mythosaur like crack out of the ground and like?
Yeah, I mean, Chekhov's. Hey, seriously, Hitch.
Yeah.
I mean, that was Chekhov's mythosaur. We said it earlier in the season. If they introduce it, they brought it back at the end with the contact with Grogu,
but it didn't do anything.
That was sort of like a cheat.
Yeah,
I think they didn't want the backlash, because they already did that when they rode the they had it in Boba, right? So you don't want to like oversaturate it, right?
I
The
don't
Great
know.
Dragon Hunt.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
There's
Like,
been beast
saturate away.
fights on this show all the time. I think what's the horn, the big rhinoceros Grogu
Right.
picked up
Yeah.
in the air. That's sort of turning into the hunt is turning into like a little
Right.
bit of a Mando trope.
Mhm.
You know, this show is really interesting. I feel almost like they had this mapped out for 8 seasons, and they ate about 2.5 episodes of content by having Mando show up in Book of Boba Fett in the interim. And that feels production related, and it makes me want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I think that they used the extra time they had to build up suspense and to show more of the world, which is what we want from a show like this. I think making Coruscant into a character is so important for the future of Star Wars television, since that's the one, that's the seat of power. That's where everybody is all the time. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really interesting thing that they've done, and I think it's really paid off already. When we see things happening in Coruscant, we have different landmarks and neighborhoods, and it's not just like Neo Tokyo all over the whole planet, right? With the space lace.
They're not new things. We're seeing these things again being introduced again and again. And I liked at the end that the New Republic was just as bad as the Old Republic.
Well, just as competent or incompetent, right?
And what happens when that? What do you get when that happens? The Empire comes back.
Right. Well, the Empire was not. See, the Empire was the result of a lot of upheaval and a lot of like turbulence, right? Like the Empire came about because of the destabilization of the Republic, from the Clone Wars. What's interesting about it seems like the New Republic is going to fall, and there's not going to be any sort of destabilizing like trigger. It's just banality. You know what I mean? The banality of bureaucracy, and they don't really have a goal beyond recovering what the Republic had, but why was the Republic important in the first place? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I really think that's one thing this season really did well, is I think they spent those, if you want to call them filler episodes, right? They spent that time really wisely, and they, I think, created a character of Coruscant where I'm interested to see the things that are happening there in the Acolyte series, in the Dawn of the Jedi series. I'm interested in seeing how they plan to show, this planet change over the course of the centuries that they're going to cover in the Star Wars timeline.
Yeah, that's a big thing, because think about it. We haven't seen this since arguably like prequel time. We really didn't see it much in the original trilogy, and everybody wonders what happened to Coruscant. We're kind of getting a peek of its renaissance, so to speak, as you said. After that, and maybe if this is going to be what Dawn of the Jedi or whatever the Rey's new thing will be, her new series, Rebirth of the Jedi, that'll be like what, 20 years from now, 10 years post Rise of Skywalker. So who knows what Coruscant will look like then.
Maybe next season we're going to get more like if we're going back to like the bounty hunter Mando and everything, we're going to get like the background building of Coruscant and like a lot of stuff with the New Republic and everything. I feel that it's almost like we're going to get our cake and eat it too. Hopefully, we're going to get the size that like Din and Grogu going on their adventures and stuff. But we're also going to get a build out of everything that happens. With Coruscant in the meantime and stuff, and with the New Republic, on the lead up into whatever movie is going to come out that Filoni's going to do. So,
and you know what, Palpatine is still behind all this
somehow.
Remember that the strings are being pulled behind the scenes, and it's just as hidden as it's always been from day one with this entire saga. Palpatine is the one that's been pulling the strings and guiding this entire story. Like, we think we're like, oh, we're picking up all this new stuff. No, he's already planned this out generations.
Well, in parts like this is like almost, I'd need to see Chekhov's Palpatine, so to speak. Like, I'd like to see how we got the Grogu kind of like the prequel of his life story. Like, we need to see who rescues Palpatine from like the doldrums or wherever the hell he fell to. Like, who rescues the body, or literally is this a spiritual, like an essence transfer, so to speak? Like, I feel like we need to fill that blank in. It's one of those things, I've always said, like, I'd like to see more dark side stuff, like more Sith tales. I think we're owed that because we know so much about the Jedi. We're getting a Jedi prequel movie. I just feel like we're cheating the other side of the story, so to speak. Because you talk about untapped potential, we talk about planets. We really know nothing other than the people who read the comic books and go into lore. We still don't know nothing about the Sith, really, right? So the acolyte will kind of be like our first foray into maybe some of their upbringings and their knowledge and their ways of the Force.
That might be
Will
a
probably,
sleeper series. Yeah.
I think it is. I think it is. But I just like to see, like, moving forward, season 5. Like, there's going to be a time jump, obviously. Where what happens? I mean, I know me and DP has said it. I'm kind of over this whole like video game style hit Din and Grogu, like just like constant, like these like little weekly bounty adventures. We see it on Bad Batch all the time. Like, I mean, I'm cool with the way it's the Mandalorian. If they even did it episodic to where like we had a Din and Grogu episode, we again go to Bo-Katan, we get introduced to some other Mandalorians, like different things, like
Well,
mix it up a little bit.
what I would be interested in seeing, if we're going to stick with Grogu and Din, more of their background, more of how they became to be or whatever. It appears that we're not going to get much of a background on Grogu, but with Din, I think they have an opportunity because we don't really know a whole lot about him. We don't know, we only got the flashback, the very first episode. We haven't gotten anything, real with him, since then, right?
Well, because his whole story is what we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
He really wasn't. He didn't have much.
He
didn't
had
have much
he had to have
substance.
something.
Well, he was
you
a
don't
child,
go
yeah.
from a boy to Din right now and have nothing in between there. I mean,
Well,
he had to go.
what would it be? What would it be, really?
I mean, yeah.
I mean,
It would,
are
yeah.
Mandalorian's lives that boring? Where
It was one of those things, though. Like,
I mean,
remember-
look at Ragnar. Ragnar didn't really get any recognition until his dad was taken out of the picture.
I don't know.
the
And
armor.
that's-
Yeah.
That says a lot about Mandalorians. If you go from a boy to a man, and nothing just happens in between.
All right.
No conflict with other Mandalorians. Nothing happens in between. That's not good story stuff to me.
Well, I think the story with him being so boring though is, remember, like, their sect of Death Watch, which as we find out really isn't Death Watch or Children of the Watch, they really are like on exile, right? So they really his story is kind of boring.
So
They
it,
picked him up.
so it is.
I mean, think about it though. She kind of alluded to that. They were in hiding, right? So
Right.
their planet's taken over, because people were asking like, where the hell have you guys been? And they're like, yeah, we lived in
hid.
basically like
We've
they
been
lived in
hiding
caves,
all
yeah.
over the place.
Oh yeah.
So
Wearing our helmets.
It wasn't one rebel out of the bunch that one kid out of the bunch that was like, I'm not,
Would that be Din?
I
Din
don't know.
wouldn't
I don't know.
know.
If you got a bunch of people together, you can't tell me everyone is going to act the same the whole time just because of a set or a religion and everything.
I don't think Din Djarin is quite as interesting as Cassian Andor.
That's a fair point. I like that. That's a fair point.
I agree.
I don't.
That's a fair point.
I agree, and what's interesting about that statement is that we know how Cassian's story ends. We know the end of that story. We don't know the end of Din's story. And you're right. Like, when I think about how there's only one season left of Andor, and that's basically going to fill in the rest of the gaps. Like, there's not going to be a reason for that character to show up again, like, at all. So, that's going to be that. That makes me kind of sad. And here I'm thinking about where we leave Din and where we leave Grogu, and it seems like that status quo could go on for
A long
20,
time.
30 years before anyone even, bothers them. Especially when you figure they're going to be, Grogu's only going to get more and more confident in his abilities, stronger. And like Luke said, until he masters his abilities, he's going to be in danger. So that's something that's going to end up happening one way or the other. I mean, I could see that's the thing about this series is you could see an enormous time jump. But what's great about this series is I don't think, like Andor, I think Andor, the success of it depends solely on your connection to Andor, the character. And I think with Mandalorian, Din himself is sort of like a stand-in for, the main character, because it is a little bit like a video game.
Right.
So I don't think that it's the same. Like, our relationship with the character is a little bit different with Din than it is with Andor. Right?
Maybe look at it like a partnership. Like, let's say this story was R2 and 3PO. So the two of them together are strong, but separate, who cares? So I think Din Grogu make Din Djarin strong. I think that's a story, and I think they feed off each other. I mean, because when one of them is in peril, the other one pitches in, and vice versa. I mean, they're a little more than father and son, because we don't want that, because then that means that Grogu has to kill Din, because that's the way
That's Star
this
Wars.
all works, right? That's the way this all works. So we don't really want that. We want them to help and encourage each other and make a better story or a better character or whatever. I mean, and even that last scene, we had so much of like the Lars homestead going on there, right? And how it was, now this is the beginning and this is how it's going to start. Like we have, I don't know, how many seasons do they have projected for this show? It has to be at least 2 or 3.
So the crazy thing is, they had written originally like 6 or 7.
No, please no.
But the big kicker became the movie thing, right? Because the idea is if we do 4 and then it leads up to Thrawn, so how do we restart? Because we know, I guess we don't know the really ending of Thrawn, or what this Filoniverse will do with Thrawn and leading into um, Rise of Skywalker, or actually The Force Awakens. So, like, where do you pick it up again, right? Because, I mean, we've kind of rewritten canon, but we haven't, because now we know that Mandalore is being rebuilt, and it's going to be a thriving planet again at some point in the next millennia, right? They're going to be a rebirth of the Mandalorians. So why not do that, right? We can do a movie, we can do another series. So if we were to do season 5, we can call it Rebirth of the Mandalore or whatever, and we can
Let's
literally
do that.
make it. They should. I mean, if I had the money to be able to do a fan movie or whatever, that would be cool. But I mean, really think about it. Like, how do you have multiple seasons? Because season 4 we're not going to see probably till the Christmas before this movie comes out. Because I'm guessing his movie's going to come out on a May time slot. So
What do you think,
yeah,
May of 25 or May of 26? Did
I'm thinking
they say like what year or something like that?
25 is going to. Well, the Ray movie's first, so his will be the second movie. So it's weird because they said the Ray movie is supposed to be first, followed by that prequel movie, and then this will be the third movie. So that will put it in 26 because that Ray movie is already. I mean, it's been getting in writing. They're just getting the cast together now, and then
So
they'll
that's
probably
3
start.
years.
So
one season of Mando, maybe. So one season of Mando between now and then, one season of
and then
Andor
we're
between now and
probably gonna
then.
get 2 seasons of. We'll probably get 1 season of Mando and 2 of Ahsoka. That's
2
what
of
I'm thinking.
Ahsoka, 1 of Bad Batch,
Yeah.
1 of
Bad Batch.
Yeah,
The
'cause-
Acolyte, 1
Still got
of
the Skeleton Crew coming.
Skeleton Crew.
And
Yeah.
Andor is in there too.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Well, Andor is Andor
Yeah.
related? That's an interesting question, because it would be interesting for them to be able to tie, like if they
It
started
has to
tying the
always
beginnings
tie
of what we're
back.
seeing here into Andor, like, which is, I think, between
Well,
13
technically,
and
it's
10
still
years
all,
before this.
it's all tie. I mean, they're having Mon Mothman. Well, they have Mon Mothman in the prequel stuff. So technically, there's like a thread, that ties into stuff.
So,
But
for the First Order to show up, I posit that Mon Mothma has to screw something up ridiculously big when she is in charge of the New Republic.
Yeah,
and
she
I feel like
drains the bank account. That's what happens.
They're paying that off. Like I feel like if we talk about Chekhov's mythosaur, and this is not exactly Mando season 3, but they're really teasing that Mon Mothma is going to have a lot of trouble being in charge of the Republic, and it's going to be all seated in like this familial drama that they've been introducing in Andor, which is really interesting to have that be the reason that like she can't unify the factions of the Republic, and why it shatters and why the First Order comes back would be a very interesting plot for them to set up. But that's off topic, and I don't necessarily want to start making my own headcanon.
None of this is off topic. This is all Star Wars, and none of this is. It doesn't matter. We're just talking. So
I mean,
but that makes sense. Another leader that fails, the good guys fall apart, and we'll say just evil rises up. That's Palpatine's thing. He likes to see both sides fail.
And to me, it's like
bringer of chaos.
And to me, it's like, why wasn't Leia in charge? And how like and like if we were talking about fate or whatever, and obviously fiction that exists, so like Leia should be the person who's in charge of the New Republic, right? So if she's not because she rejects it or for what wants to do Jedi training in stage, and instead of Mon Mothma's there, I mean that could be a heavy duty, a heavy duty consequence of her decision to train with Luke, her decision to have a kid. I there's a lot of different and interesting plot points that are, to come in the next couple years in universe and Star Wars. Like I think Ben Solo should be being born around this time. So,
Right. Yeah.
there's a lot of canonical, drama going on with these.
They would really have to plug that hole for me. Like when Ben Solo was born, like I want to just explain that, because that was really out of the blue. They really didn't, because there was already a family. But there was already a Solo family, but then they added Ben, and he, why not build off what was already there that the comic book
that's
readers.
A very interesting story.
What
right
the Jason and Anakin story? They couldn't do that.
Yeah, the Jason, Anakin, and there was a girl, Jana.
You can't tell that story without having, I think, the Yuzun Vong show up, and that is such a big deal if it happens that it would be
that's
super long.
That's another saga itself.
Plus, I mean, what happens after that with Jason? This is the old EU, the old days, back in the day when. And it's funny, I was thinking about this. The very first EU story, the whole plot is they're cloning Luke Skywalker because they figure out a way to put force sensitivity into clones. Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Trent is the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a great book, and that's what Moff Gideon was doing.
Right. That's how big a poser he is. He can't even not rip off some story for his own fanfic.
He's got to rip. He probably has Splinter of the Mind's Eye in his back pocket, and he's reading it. What am I going to do now? Yeah, I'll do this.
Well, what's interesting about that story, and what made me think about it, is that what they do is they basically have a fake Obi-Wan that lures Luke into some confrontation. So that would be an interesting. It'd be interesting to see what Palpatine does to mess with him, because obviously it's effective. We see that in episode 8 that Luke obviously is susceptible to whatever trickeration Palpatine is subjecting him to.
Trickery.
It's always family oriented. Also, I mean, it's never about an entire planet. It has to be family, like a friend, something. Luke is very. I mean, you can manipulate him on a very basic level. So he hasn't really achieved that. Like Vader, he could care less. He could care less until the end, when he was finally falling apart, and he saw what Palpatine was doing and how he didn't like being influenced and twisted by somebody. I mean, I think that was it. I mean, I think that's what turned him, is he knew that Palpatine didn't have his best interest in mind. Palpatine would have killed him in a second. And that's what Luke helped him realize.
Right.
Yeah. But in hindsight, when you think about the story, think about Luke's training on Dagobah with Yoda, right? And the character flaw in Luke Skywalker himself. You said it. He's vulnerable. He didn't even finish his training, right? Because he was so vulnerable, emotionally charged, that he cut his training off. Correct. He cut his training off to go try to save them when Yoda said, "You're not ready," right?
But is Yoda trustworthy? Yoda is a corrupt figure of the Jedi Order, presiding over their entire downfall.
He
tells Luke, "Don't
he's just like the rest of them."
But think about it though, like Yoda realizes his downfall, right? And that's that whole balance between the light and the dark, right? That kind of gray Jedi. And I really think, in hindsight, looking back, that's really where we see Yoda at now. That he becomes that Qui-Gon in that moment. He realizes, I effed up, right? I should have been more of a Qui-Gon, because you need the light and the dark to become the perfect Jedi. And I think that's where he kind of gives up a little, that gives in, so to speak, to Luke's emotion. More like Qui-Gon was more of an emotionally charged person, more reasoning, not just, this is the code of the Jedi, you have to follow this. There's two different sides. So I just feel like, when we talk about the story and really why we needed that duel of the fates, that duality story, I think that would be the main thing that, as we get into these stories and discuss this, that brings us all full circle, right? That duel of the fates, duality of a Jedi and the Sith and the light and the dark. That's what it's always been about with the family, and I just think that's a big miss still to this day. Is like to get that. And what I heard they're going to talk about that in the Ahsoka series when they do this whole dark Jedi that they're not Sith because the Sith are rebuilding or whatever, and you can only have a rule of two. So dark Jedi are just people that fell from the order but aren't really Sith
It's like the
followers.
difference between people that celebrate Christmas and the people that
Don't.
Yeah.
or the people that celebrate Christmas and the people that go to church every single week. You know what I mean? Like the Sith are much more like mainline, traditional. They do the whole liturgy. These Dark Jedi, they're more loosey goosey. Maybe there's a guitar in their service.
Yeah. So how would that be? How would that be if we went all the way back in the beginning of everything, and it actually started with the Sith? Like they were the ones that were in charge and making the rules, and everyone was happy. And all of a sudden, here come the light side, the Jedi, and they're sort of rebels in their own right, and they somehow get a foothold and stamp the Sith down. Wouldn't that be enough to make Palpatine angry enough to carry on this fight for all these decades, centuries?
Well, it does, but it begs to differ. Me and Hitch has had this argument multiple times. Like, we'll really find out what path the Jedi went to because we're thinking Jedi's are keepers of peace all the time.
That maybe
Clearly something went wrong when we see this prequel movie because that's going to open the doors up to what the Jedi were really about.
Yeah.
And then somewhere between that and the High Republic, rules got rewritten and it became more of this is our code instead of the true code of the Jedi. So I mean, I think that's an interesting take, and it's a great take because it's something we talk about all the time. Like we want to know like the stories, and it seems like I don't know, maybe somebody on Star Wars is secretly watching our podcast or listening to our thoughts, and a lot of you guys' thoughts as well.
That's
they're trying to find out where we live is what they're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
What our IP addresses are.
Mickey Mouse is at it. So I mean that's a really good point as far as and his, he's our history buff. He could speak to this when Democrats and Republicans were of a different ideology. Yeah, they flip flop. About almost 100 years ago and everything. The Jedi could have been a whole different thing, where we think that that they were like the lights. They weren't always a light side. They were maybe had elements of the dark side or whatever. And then switch philosophies. Something happened. That would be a super interesting story. To find out that they were one thing, then all of a sudden turned into another thing, and then now this thing, is bringing elements back from when they originated and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's things change because you're dealing with people and humans and stuff. You're dealing with people who are malleable, who have different sets of societies and different technologies and stuff to influence them and bring them into different areas and periods and stuff. Things don't always change; have to stay the same, and throughout history.
Well, you have to also remember that from a historical perspective, the stories that get passed down are always written later. They're never written usually at the time. So for instance, the new Foundation myth of Mandalore is like, if we come back to it in 50 years, that we know the actual sequence of events because we watched it. We watched them do it. We watched them light the forge. We know who did what we know it. We know exactly what happened. Well, is that the story that we're going to encounter on Mandalore? Yeah, different periods of time, maybe not necessarily, because maybe, further down the line, there's a change in leadership and the new leadership doesn't want to make it seem like they weren't involved in the Foundation. So they have to alter the Foundation myth to make that one person very central. Looking at you, Joseph Stalin, you did that. And then later subsequently erased people from photographs. And there was a lot of control over that information, right?
Right.
And I think, to tie this back into our larger conversation about the Jedi and the Sith, it's very likely that if we look at the actual Foundation events of maybe the Republic or of, the Republic's foundation after the Sith Empire or whatever, we could find that there's, very good reasons that the Jedi Order built their temple on top of a dark side nexus, right? There could be very good reasons that they abhor attachment of all kinds, and that they don't let you grow up with your family, and that, you know, there could be very good reasons that these things are the case that are like common knowledge to the inhabitants of the galaxy far, far away, because their history is essentially littered with tin pot emperors who got all hopped up on the dark side and started conquering stuff. And they're like, well, it's a really terrible idea to let somebody that uses the Force own property, because as soon as you do, they just want everything. And maybe that's just in there, like they just know it, like the same way we know how like money corrupts you, like as a society. Like, we know that because we live in a capitalist society, and we know what happens if somebody starts, you know, give someone $1 trillion and they're just going to misuse it. We know that because we're in a capitalist society. But if we weren't, and we weren't familiar with, you know, the corrupting nature of capital, it would be understandable if we didn't have those stories in our lexicon, right?
Right.
So it makes a lot of sense that we don't have any stories about people using the Force and conquering stuff, because we don't have the Force, right? Like that doesn't exist. So that all lines up. But these, like the Jedi were in charge of stuff, or were involved in the governance of the Galactic Republic for like 20,000 years. That's a very long time. And when we look at how religions, and I think of the Jedi as a religious body, but when we think of how religions shift, look at, you know, Christianity or Islam or Buddhism over a couple centuries, look at it over a couple millennia, and there is a huge differentiation in the culture, in the holidays that are celebrated, in the behaviors that are rewarded. All that stuff shifts historically. So it'll be interesting to see all of that in the context of the Jedi. And, you know, I think that there's a lot more that they could show us that would illustrate, you know, how these people live, and what their history is, which I want to know more about.
And you know what's interesting, even with this new race we're getting, this new Mandalorian race, there's a faction built into it. There's the faction that wears the helmet, and there's the faction that doesn't have to wear the helmet. So don't you think that after several decades, that's going to create a divide?
Absolutely.
There can be another civil war, Mandalorian civil war again.
And that's what we're taught. That's this whole story. That's what we're always talking about. Is there's this society that there's some definite divide that splits them. And I like the way that they're working together right now. Like it's really aggressive, and they're really all into it, and they can, you know, the ones that want to take the helmet off, take the helmet off. The ones that don't. Now, Ragnar, where does he come in? Because he's new. I mean, he's the only character that I know that's a new Mandalorian. He was just given the right to walk the way of the creed. Where is he going to fall? His dad was legit like, where the hell?
He was Death Watch, yeah. So his father was really the last member of Death Watch, and we'll put it this way, Ragnar would be what Bo-Katan is, because he would be considered royalty, right?
Right.
Because Disco was royalty.
So he would be their leader, like the ones that kept the helmet on.
Yeah, think about it. He would be Mandalore, right? He would be the one going as Mandalore the Great.
Yeah.
So if we're talking, you know, sequel era,
time jump.
Sequel era, we're talking about a 45, 50-year-old up and coming Ragnar dealing with the sunset of the Bo-Katan regime because she's in her 80s, and that's like being 55 years old for us.
Favor.
Right.
Yeah. So that there has to be some importance to his ceremony at the end of this season. There has to be something there that, you know, he's going to be a leader somehow, and he's going to have to pick up the pieces once some other side falls apart, and he has to do it right.
And I think to bring it back to like the amount of episodes and the time you have to tell your story is where the Andor effect came in, where Andor had 12 episodes to tell his story, you know, and actually told it well in sections, almost like a 4-quarter story.
Yeah,
you know, 4-quarter season and everything. This could have been the same way. If I don't know why Disney doesn't didn't allow, 4 more episodes to be told. Maybe they're hung up on like, okay, it needs to be 8 episodes, and this is what we want to cover. A lot in the season could have been told a lot better had it had more time to breathe.
Right.
Especially what was happening at the end with them all coming together, because it all came together sort of like smooth, maybe a little too smooth. Where it wasn't that much conflict, where you would think that these two factions that have been, warring and, been at each other's throats for such a long time, it would have been a lot more conflict between beliefs, especially with the taking off of the helmet to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it became a budget thing, to be honest, because when we talk about the shows, to take it back to Stranger Things, I mean, Stranger Things has been spending 25 million a show, right? Reportedly, The Mandalorian was at 16, and with Disney's budget cuts, that even got cut even tighter. So if we really think about how this is going, I mean, 2 more probably would have been too tight. Plus, we look at the release calendar, what they got. It's one of those budget things to where, and then keep in mind, this was Chapek era, right? So he wasn't big on, Disney Plus, and he wasn't big on, these properties. That's where Iger's back now that these properties are bigger stories. He's opening that budget up and he's reallocating funds. So
Yeah.
to get 2 more, I understand. I definitely think we would have 2 more.
Mhm.
And the biggest payoff is the whole snitch or the whole spy thing, right? I mean, let's be honest. They skipped it. They ran out of time. Whatever we say, they wanted to go into that story and they wanted to give us a spy. I just think they ran out of
Yeah,
time.
they didn't explain it. They didn't explain it
They didn't.
enough. Yeah, we assume who it is.
There's one, and that's
Right.
Moff Gideon's lady, but the other spies with the S, there was no second spy, and I think that's just a time issue.
And that could be Pershing, because after his mind was fried,
Could be, yeah.
they could do whatever they want with him,
Right.
because there was a purpose to that, and that so there's a hole. Okay, there's a fault of this season is this character that we were introduced to in episode 1 of Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
We now got him back, and basically he was turned into a boiled egg, and we have no idea what happened after that.
And it was great.
And it was great. It was a great scene. I mean, I rewatch it and I'm like, wow, I feel bad. What happens next? I always want to know what happens to someone that gets really
Fried.
jacked.
Well,
Right.
it happened to Bix. She seems, I mean, as of now, she seems okay, right? She
Right,
kind of
right,
stumbled
right.
on. She stumbled onto the ship. That's the last thing we seen her, is her stumbling onto the ship for the escape.
Right. She
so-
got onto the ship and she's cool. So we're going to see her in the next season. But what about Pershing? And, I mean, so they better pay it off in this next episode. They better open with it, like, see, episode 1 better be Pershing coming back as some sort of maniacal cloning genius and making Palpatines everywhere and Moff Gideons everywhere.
Palpatines, lots of get your Palpatines here.
Maybe Gideon is tasked him with taking care of the other clones that should have been on the other part of Mandalore or another planet or somewhere.
Right, because Din didn't kill all the Gideons. Right? There's
assuming.
We're assuming, yeah.
There's got to be one or two somewhere floating.
I gotta think that as brilliant as Moff Gideon is, he didn't keep them all in one place.
Right.
Well, that the theory is that person that was killed was not Gideon, but a clone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's floating out there.
It would make sense. That would make sense.
I mean, they're showing the photos because Gideon had a mustache. This clone didn't have this person didn't have a mustache. I actually
shave.
watched.
That's some cartoon stuff right there.
The weird part is I was watching that last episode. So when Bo-Katan hit his armor, she actually slashed his armor with the Darksaber, and she didn't even cut it.
Right.
So on the flip side, is this Inferno strong enough to burn this Beskar alloy?
All at once? And
That's
it's
what I'm
not,
saying.
The armor is not, it's not like King Arthur armor. There's still, there's holes. I mean, there's places where there's still like uniform, like cloth.
Well, not Gideon's. Gideon's was a robotic suit. That's why the more I think about this, the more I know he's not dead.
Well,
He's like,
okay.
I'm in a dark trooper suit, except now it's
Yeah,
got a
right.
great brain, my brain.
He's in that dark trooper suit with like fire retard or whatever in this thing. Like, bros, no, I don't think. The more I watch that, I watched it earlier. He's
Yeah,
not
he's
dead.
not done.
He's
Nobody,
not
he's
dead.
not done.
Well,
He's not.
that's a capital ship exploding in a hole. I mean, that's
Yeah,
a
but
lot of fire and fury. I don't think
keep in
anything's
mind.
going to stand up to that.
Well, we
Except
Size
for
of a
our man
skyscraper,
Grogu.
Grogu using the
we
Force,
we
yo.
also thought that Boba Fett was dead and a Snorlax stomach.
Oh,
it's almost like it's a comic book, and
Right.
they can do anything they want, and we just are gonna love it and go yummy, yummy, yummy.
yummy,
Give
yummy,
me more, no matter what they do. Yummy, yummy.
yummy, 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 Mr. Mickey Mouse. Give me more, please. You know, in my mouth. Hey.
Well, yeah, that went a little left, but well, I'll let it slide. We'll let it slide for this episode. We will let it slide for this episode. But yeah, guys, kind of wrapping up season three. It's wild. I think everybody on the panel here said the same thing. We are excited about it. Would we have liked more content? Yeah. Would we like more? But overall, but still a huge success. Like maybe
So,
we're
so,
just
so to go back to what you said at the very beginning of the episode, I guess to round everything up, we are spoiled because
we are.
we definitely we get this stuff and then complain about it or talk about it to death once we get it, but
America, we complain about everything.
Hey, that's what we do as Americans. We can't help it.
I think. Sorry, go on. I didn't. No.
That's fine. I mean, just like Hit said. I mean, we gobble it up. It comes in our mouths. We just can't help but eat it. Consume it. We're consumers.
Come on,
we're
now.
consumers. We're like Pac-Man. We gotta gobble it up.
It's interesting that the only watch of this season that is going to be like ours are the contemporary ones, because 2 months, no one is going to watch season 3 of The Mandalorian over 2 months. That's never going to happen again. I mean, a week, maybe you do one a day if you're being careful and you want to actually stretch it, but you're not going to wait a week and then watch between episode 7 and episode 8 of this, right? That's never going to happen.
No one's going to watch. There, I hope you don't do that.
No one's going to watch that 7th episode and then be like, you know what? Time to do something else for 6 weeks.
I'm gonna wait till next week. I'm gonna wait till next week. I'm watching it.
So what's interesting is for everybody that is from here on, right? For everybody that's watching this season, the only option really available to them is going to be to watch it all at once. So, it's going to it is going to change their reaction, like you were saying. Yeah. And I think that's something that's good. And we're just going to have to get used to in the future watching it all at once. And everybody that hasn't seen it now, today when we record it, is going to experience it in that way.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's going to explore with a David stream. Everybody's going to experience it just in a different way and everything. And so we're going to come back to the content as they just keep coming back to, because I mean, it's Star Wars. I mean, it's so much stuff happening in the universe that you just can't help but come back. I mean, you got the Force stuff, and then you got the Mandalorian stuff. You just got a whole bunch of stuff that you can get into.
I mean, and think about it though. We've had 2 successful shows, really, realistically, not driven by Jedi. We've had Andor and we've had this. Even though there were Jedi elements in there, we've shown other things. I know Hitch has said this. I really wish they would have did the Rogue Squadron, but that's canceled. It looks like what they're going to do, and this is alleged, that the stuff from the Rogue Squadron, they're adding in the Skeleton Crew, and we'll see a little bit more of the kind of Rogue Squadron idea in season 5 when he's working with the New Republic. So I think they're going to try to bleed that in a little more as far as letting us see more of the squadron, so to speak, since we're not getting that series. Which would be nice, because I really would have liked to seen that project. More space battles. That would have been the first of its kind. Really have something like that. More that space marshal. We had that episode, but to see that weekly, to have like space marshals and all that stuff, and
would have been cool.
It would have been. But,
would have been cool.
It would get real like Battlestar Galactic-y, though. If you had just star battles, like just dogfights going on over territory, it would be like, I don't know, real 70s sci-fi.
Definitely would have been interesting to see. But I mean, like we said, to see anything Filoni and Favreau touch, I mean, they would have found a way to pull it off for sure. So that's one of those what ifs. Like we've all talked about the what if stories. I think that's our big miss. I'd love to see the Star Wars what ifs.
I'm ready for after Ahsoka. I think is when
Yeah.
because I really feel like they're gonna end up in that world between worlds, and that once you go there in one of these mainline live action series, that opens up the door to all of those secondary,
Right.
timelines to exist.
That trailer where she fights that Balin guy, that is in the world between worlds. So whether she and I don't know too much about it, I haven't got any information, but allegedly somebody had said that they, I guess, were pulled from a timeline because they have like ancient weapons, so to speak, like their armor. Like dudes
Mhm.
wear like kind of armor, and that's not a
Mhm.
Jedi thing. So I don't know if they were pulled from another timeline, but I mean, this world between worlds, it really is going to change what we know, phonetically in Star Wars, which will be cool because
They're
you don't
just
have
not.
to be
They're
there.
just trying to not call it the multiverse, huh?
No, I mean, it is the same thing, right? Everybody has it. I mean,
They're trying not to call the real multiverse the multiverse.
right, right,
That's a Marvel thing. We'll stay away
yeah,
from that.
Okay.
right.
I don't
Well,
need
not
it.
Just
even Marvel. It's
means
a
that
DC.
eventually over time
Everything.
probabilities all equal out to zero and we all tumble into the same singularity, so causality doesn't have to matter. That's all it all means. Just relax, everything's fine. And
Just inhale deeply, and you'll be good.
Right.
just hope you don't
Yeah.
live long enough to have your atoms ripped apart in the tidal waves at the end of time.
Right. And you don't have
Yeah.
to be ripped apart in a transporter beam on a underfunded Enterprise starship.
What if they find out like a couple hundred years into the Star Trek universe, like, oh no, every time we transported someone, we killed them. They died
Every single time. If we transport 5 people, only 4 survive.
5 deaths. 5 deaths. 5 transports, 5 deaths, technically. That's just how things work. You're really literally killing them and starting a new copy. Every time, like the Prestige.
That's funny.
They're like, oh my God, we've been doing this for so long. And they're like, now introducing the escalator. Use it instead of murdering your crew 30 million times.
Right. We'll just escalate you to the next ship. It's fine. It's just as quick, and you'll survive.
And you'll survive.
But no, yeah, guys, another fun wrap up. Excited for what's coming for the rest of the year so far. So,
are we going to come back next week and do as Visions seasons 2 the next week?
No, next week is off week. We're going to
do our off week
after Divisions. Yeah, because Divisions comes out on May the 4th, right?
Yeah.
And so next the week after.
So yeah, the week after. In the next 2 days, I'll be playing Jedi Survivor. So that comes out Thursday morning, midnight. So I'll be up all night tomorrow night playing this new Star Wars game. So for all those
who
have
good. It looks great.
And the cool thing is this is a canon story. So this will be a little bit before this time period, but this is a story that will be looped into this whole Filoniverse. So that's the interesting part, is it's part of this overall theory. Will we see Cal Kestis on a big screen? That's the big thing. Cameron Monaghan loves working with Star Wars. We even got into our argument on backstage and off camera about other people's ideas and thoughts about Star Wars that are now crawling back to work. But we'll leave that for another week.
There'll be plenty of time for us to talk about
definitely that. Definitely will be, because I think that'll be a fun discussion to have. It's for all those who haven't known, there's a lot of inklings of actors coming back and whatnot, and interesting talk. So we'll get into, as we said, we come back, we're gonna have a week break next week. We'll get into Star Wars Visions, and depending on how that runs, maybe we will do a news and notes as far as, that'll lead us into, obviously, May the 4th, and usually Star Wars has some big stuff planned for that. There'll be releases. Will probably be another Ahsoka trailer. So we'll probably get into the Visions, and then we'll go into maybe a discussion as far as some news and notes as far as Star Wars, since we'll be off for it'll be 2 weeks on the time that we are live again. So until next week, or actually till the following week, guys, we see you. This is the way.
This is the way.